عايشينها بكل.
Welcome back, dear viewers, and now we are joined over the phone by Mr. Ali Mansy, strategic and economic expert. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be with you.
Yes. Mr. Ali, what is meant by domestic liquidity in the context of a country's banking sector?
Well, to define the domestic liquidity very shortly and in simple words for non-experts as well, domestic liquidity refers to the total amount of money supply available in the circulation within the local economy. It usually includes different levels of money supply. So it includes, they usually call it MS1, MS4, but we can simplify them into the cash in circulation, the cash which is actually circulated within the economy, the bank deposits that are within the banks, and other savings and time deposits. So it's very important for this point is that the amount of local currency available to the economy, to the household, business, and other government sectors via banks and financial institutions, it has to be in congruency with the financial and governmental strategy above and policies.
So, sir, what factors might have contributed to the rise in domestic liquidity in Egypt?
Usually, the rise in domestic liquidity is associated with inflation or inflationary, expansionary policies. We can usually governments they have two types of policies, two bundles of policies, contractionary and expansionary. So, expansionary policies is a set of fiscal and monetary policies. Fiscal policies by the government and monetary policies by the central bank. So. The factors that would contribute to a rise in domestic liquidity are typically expansionary monetary policies, which ensure the central bank is injecting more money into the circulation. Also, increased public spending by the government, which is part of the fiscal policy, is that the government is increasing its public spending, rising remittances from Egyptians abroad. This might be due to the political situation and the economic situation. It might be more appealing for those living abroad, so they're transferring their remittances. Currency devaluation also contributes to the rise in domestic liquidity and private sector borrowing and other types of borrowing.
So, sir, how does this level of liquidity compare to previous months of the year or years?
Well, across the previous months and years, yes, there has been a steady increase in domestic liquidity over the past few years, and that's mainly due to different structural reforms, also hand in hand with inflationary pressure due to global external effects or circumstances affecting the situation in Egypt. And also the monetary expansion policy through injecting money supply, more money supply into the economy. But actually, recent months they show accelerated growth in the liquidity, and that's usually associated with tracking inflation and other adjustments in the money supply.
So, Mr. Ali, what are the potential effects of increased domestic liquidity on inflation in Egypt?
The most direct and maybe short-term effects as well, because there are different effects on the short run and on the long run. Usually on the short run, they are demand-side effects. So the high liquidity would mean more available income or available money at the consumer end. So higher consumer demand, they will have more available liquidity, so this will increase demand, and it might drive inflation or put upward pressure on inflation. Also, it can fuel other speculative activities like real estate, and it might also have an effect on the cost-push inflation due to the increasing costs. So this will drive prices higher because costs are higher. But in the long run, it might have more positive effects.
So, Mr. Ali, what are the potential effects of increased domestic liquidity on inflation? This is what we tackled, and what might this rise affect the Egyptian economy?
Okay, on the short run, we already we just discussed. On the short run, it might affect increase in prices and inflation. But on the long run, because it's on the short run, it typically tackles the demand side of the economy. But in the long run, it will have a more supply side effect, which is affecting the production level, the capacity of the country. So there will be easier access to credit for businesses, for example, new startups, foreign direct investment. The boosted consumption, the higher demand will drive the supply to produce more and increase the capacity, especially if associated with human capital development interventions and more technology-based policies.
So,
it will still have some negative effects on the inflation.
So, could this level of liquidity indicate economic stability, or it has risks?
We cannot answer this question for the liquidity in and of itself, because there are many other factors and indicators that should be taken into consideration. So it depends on the whole context. If it's backed up by strong GDP growth and strong supply side policies, increased production, this will stabilize inflation or absorb the increased inflation, especially if it's associated with policies to promote exports, to increase the exports and put the balance of trade in a better position. So in general, yes, it might. It has a very high potential to indicate economic stability if you can manage the risks, avoid the risks, and leverage it in association with other policies related to international trade and foreign direct investment.
So, sir, are there any recent monetary policy decisions that could have influenced this trend?
Yes, of course, interest rate adjustments introduced tools into the banking sector, financial market, more maybe open market operations. Also the gradual, maybe continuous but gradual devaluation of the Egyptian pound. It's slowing down now. So those are all monetary, and some expectations, some forecasts in the near future that there will be further adjustments in the interest rate to start offsetting the, or at least empowering this step.
So, sir, what are the implications of this figure for Egypt's international credit rating or foreign investor confidence?
Well, it might have a dual effect, because it might create inflation concerns, further devaluation of the currency, some uncertainties in the future. So this might be a perception for some, and they will be more concerned with the risks. And it might also, there are concerns that it might have some negative effect on credit ratings. It's not controlled. But the other good side of the situation is that if this situation is well managed and this liquidity is well managed and it's injected in the right places in the economy, this would boost the investor confidence and also the consumer confidence, and this would have a strong long-term effect on the production capacity and the export capacity of potential of Egypt.
So, sir, also an important economic news took place today, as we all know that the United States and China reached an agreement regarding the tariff war that was taking place between the two countries. To what extent this agreement will influence trade in general and economy?
Well, the whole situation between U.S. and China is very unpredictable, and of course they are trying, at least at face value, they're trying to reach certain agreements. And what I can say about this is that it's very important to keep a very close eye on what's happening, because the global environment is not as stable as we hope it is, and something which is building resilience, understanding that being dependent on on other global circumstances is not a very favorable position for us. So the more independency, which could be actually achieved, and it's actually being achieved through political and economic bilateral, multilateral agreements Egypt is undertaking with several countries, maybe including China as well.
Yes, finally, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ali Mansy, strategic and economic expert. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of our program, Cairo Local Time. Thank you for watching.